Okay, everybody, this is video 2 of 2. This is the continuation of the last video where I showed you the PowerPoint. And this time, we're going to play around with the databases. I'm going to show you, first of all, why it's not a good idea just to Google stuff. So I'm sure that I probably don't have to show you this, but I want to anyway, just to kind of put it in your head that Google, while being an amazing tool and having all the human knowledge at the tips of our fingers, is a wonderful thing, that for academic research, it's probably not your best option. So in the last video, I used the example of homelessness and veterans. So we're going to use homeless veterans as my Google search term. And look at the amount of sources. Now, do I have time to go through 5.5 million sources? No, I do not. And so I am going to forget about Google for this particular task. Now, I also mentioned Google Scholar. So there are a couple of things you can do here. You can look for articles. You can look for case law. We're going to look for articles because we're not lawyers. And a lot of times case law is hard to read. So if I type in homeless veterans here, I'm going to get about 57,600 results. And not all of these are going to be super helpful. Now, I can do a little bit of customization here. So you'll see I can do a custom range for years. I can sort by relevance. I can include citations, blah, blah, blah. But there are lots of things I can't do using Google Scholar. And I still don't have a lot of time to go through 58,000 sources. So we're going to forget about Google Scholar for now, too. What we are going to do is go to Grayson's homepage. Grayson's homepage, grayson.edu or www.grayson.edu. Either one will work. And then you're going to go to the libraries page, which will bring you here. And this is a picture of our library. And you'll notice over here on the side, it has all kinds of links. Here are the hours. Any information you need is all right here. We're going to play on virtual resources. Virtual resources takes me to a couple of interesting places. I've got an A to Z database list here, and then I've got a subject database list down here. Now, hopefully you remember from the last video what the difference between the two is. If I just want to play, or if I know specifically what database I want to use, I'm going to go to the A to Z database list, and I'm going to scroll through here until I find the one I'm looking for. My personal favorite as a researcher myself is JSTOR. It is an incredibly expensive database that Grayson pays for, and it is probably the most comprehensive database that exists. And so I'm really happy that we have it at Grayson. I would highly recommend learning how to use it, but I do also recommend being as narrow with your search terms as possible if you're going to use JSTOR, because it is really huge. But there are all kinds of other databases here. Let's say I'm writing a paper for my history class. Here's a U.S. history in context. I can also come down here to browse databases by subject. I'm just going to open this in a new tab and I'll show you what this looks like. These are the databases that are specifically tied to the subject of history, which is very cool. And they're in alphabetical order, so you can look. There's JSTOR. JSTOR is on all of the subjects, by the way. I'll show you why in just a few minutes when I show you what JSTOR looks like. Okay, so we're going to use JSTOR to find an article on homeless veterans. And we're using JSTOR because, again, it's my very favorite one, and it's the biggest and the best. So we're going to go into JSTOR, and if you're using these databases off campus, you're going to have to sign in to your Grayson portal to do this. You have to use your portal stuff to sign in. It's the same thing as whatever you go to check your schedules or pay your bills or whatever. All right, so that'll bring up this page right here, and we want the advanced search because hopefully you remember what I said in the last video. I could just type in homeless veterans here, and I would just get way too much stuff. So I want to do advanced search, which is going to let me narrow my terms and be a lot more specific about what I'm looking for. So in here, I'm going to type in veterans and homeless. I can add a search box if I want. We're going to start with just veterans and homeless, but what if I added a search box that said veterans, homeless, and then the third search box said Texas? Then that's going to narrow my field even further, which is a good thing. And the narrower your field is, the more specific information you're going to get, and stuff that you're not going to have to search through thousands and thousands of sources to get what you need. All right, so the next thing I told you I wanted you to do was choose the types of sources you want. Let's say I don't want reviews, I don't want books, I don't want research reports, pamphlets, or miscellaneous. I only want articles. Now, research reports are a good source. You can use those, but sometimes they can be a little hard to get through. I don't necessarily want to mark my publication date right now because I just want to show you how vast your sources can be. Now, eventually, you can even come down here to the journal filter and you can search for specific subjects. Look, it'll say African American Studies, 20 titles. That means there are 20 different journals in the subject of African American Studies, which is very cool. African Studies has 59 journals. So the one I spend most of my time in, I spend a lot of time in folklore. I spend a lot of time in sociology. I also spend a lot of time, I used to have one, American Indian Studies right there. Spend a lot of time there. So eventually, when you get a little bit more familiar with this, you can actually narrow down the specific subject area of your topic, and that'll help you too. All right, so let's say we're good for now. Let's just go see what we can find. We can always come back to here. So JSTOR's doing my search right now, and it says there are 933 articles. That's a lot better than 5.5 million or 57,000, right? So I still don't have enough time to search through 933 sources, but I can certainly further narrow my search, and I can even do that from here. Search within the results. Let's see what happens if I type in Texas. And let's see what happens if I type in, or if I choose American Studies. And let's see, psychology. And let's see, sociology and statistics. Let's see what happens to my list if I do that. Update my results. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. 255. So much easier to go through than 933. So I can continue even to narrow this down. I can throw in a year. I can take out one of my subject areas. There's all kinds of stuff I can do. But from here, it's very easy. All of these are full text, every single one of them. So you don't even have to worry about clicking the full text box, because full text is all JSTOR does. And you've got all kinds of cool stuff here. You can do a citation. You can create a list like a bibliography so that you can keep all of your sources in one place. And what I normally do is download the PDFs, because then I can save them on my computer and have them forever and always, even after I graduate and I don't have access to this database for free anymore. And this is what I did for my dissertation. I have PDFs of all my sources, and it's awesome. Okay, so hopefully that helps. I have given you 2 databases to play with this week in your discussion. The first one is JSTOR, and the other one is a U.S. History and Context database. And I've asked you to locate 2 very specific sources, but I didn't do that in this video because I don't want to do your work for you. I want you to practice with this. I want to give you the search terms and you go find them yourselves. So hopefully this helps. And if you have any questions, you know how to get hold of me. There are all kinds of cool databases at the Grayson Library, and I encourage you to go and play around with them, not just for English class, but anytime you have to write a paper for anything, you really should use databases instead of just going straight to Google. I know you think it's easier to use Google, but it isn't. It's just easier at the beginning, and then you have to sort through all of those sources, which is ridiculous. Plus, getting your information directly from websites, which is what happens when you search from Google, is a less academic and less trustworthy way of finding research. If you search a database, then you're going to get actual scholarship that will be respected in the field. And that's always much better. You've got to learn to do that. Even if you don't want to, you have to. So you're going to start next week writing your research paper, and we'll go step by step, and I'll teach you all the pieces, and you'll have to do a bibliography and annotate it and all that kind of stuff. And databases are going to be your friend for that. So be thinking about it, play around with it, see what kind of information you can get. Some of the databases we have at Grayson are really fun to play with. For instance, we've got one called Opposing Viewpoints, and that's one of my very favorite ones. And it will put articles from one side of the argument and the other side of the argument in there, and you can read both sides of the argument. It's a really fun thing to play around with. But there's also U.S. History and Context. There's a sheet music library. There's genealogy. There's do-it-yourself home repair databases that you can play around in. We've got American Indian Studies. We've got tons and tons and tons of stuff that is just a lot of fun to play with. So I encourage you to just go mess around with the databases and see what kind of cool information you can find.